Leading today's session is going to be Dan Allaby, who is the Director of Cloud Offerings at Avnet Technology Solutions. And we're also lucky enough to be joined today by Johnathan King, who's VP of Cloud Strategy and Business Development at Savvis. So with that, let me hand the floor over to Dan to begin today's Tech Talk. And thanks again for everyone to join us.
Thanks, Scott. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for joining. We've been having these sessions now for the past a few months. I think this is going on session number 5 now. And we really appreciate the attendance, and it's been growing over time, and so we're getting great response from you. Have some awesome questions this week that we're going to try and address in the session, and also just want to extend my welcome to Johnathan King as well from Savvis. Thanks, Jonathan, for joining today. Just maybe before we even go any further, and so Savvis is a strategic partner with Avnet Cloud Solutions and certainly a global leader in cloud infrastructure and hosted IT solutions. Maybe Savvis, maybe Jonathan, from your words, you could do a quick introduction to everyone on what your role is, in behind VP of Strategy for Cloud at Savvis. What is your role, and just a high level from your words, what Savvis delivers in the market.
Sure. So I, in my role, lead as my title describes, Cloud Strategy and Business Development. And what that means is I am working on our key partnerships. We've established an ecosystem program and then also have alliance relationships with folks like Cisco and VMware and Intel and others. And I also work on M&A activity, such as our recent acquisition of AppFog. And then lastly have the privilege of being an evangelist for what we're up to and talking to customers and analysts and partners and such as Avnet, and participating in sessions like today. And I'm looking forward to just under an hour we have to talk through where we are in cloud and what we're seeing. And from a Savvis standpoint, Savvis is the cloud and IT services arm of CenturyLink. CenturyLink is a large communications provider based in the U.S. and acquired Savvis about 2 years ago. And Savvis operates, has a very large co-location portfolio, operates over 50 data centers globally, has a very large managed hosting and managed services business, supporting professional services business, and also a large cloud business. And we're really focused as part of the CenturyLink family of really growing and building and bringing a portfolio of offerings, and certainly cloud, but also supporting offerings in terms of bare metal deployments and co-location or network or security, whatever a client might need across a continuum of things, and then working with partners such as Avnet to help extend and project those offerings through channels in addition to our direct sales capabilities.
Awesome. Thanks very much. So just hitting on the goal for these sessions, obviously I want to encourage interactive chatting. We've got also in the room with me Brian Young and Eric Holler. Brian's going to man the chat session, and certainly as you're hearing the conversation unfold, definitely encouraging you to inject with questions. And we're going to try and get through as many of them as we can today, but if we do miss getting to your question, then we'll definitely circle around with you after the session. The last session and this one as well will be on Avnet Cloud Ready in the blog area, and we're working on some enhancements to deliver these recorded sessions in other medium as well. I'm looking at sort of podcasts through iTunes and other things that we may do to make them more available for you to reference. And the thing we just started last session, we're going to do it again today, is we're asking a Twitter question of the day. So this is just sort of a fun question and based on sort of relevant things that we're seeing real time, and I thought this was an interesting one to get your perspective. So we encourage you to tweet back to us with your comments. So the Twitter question of the day is, given recent events, who do you see as today's top provider of cloud-based backup? And by recent events, so if you've been following the buzz, there's been some things happening in the market around cloud storage this week, and with one of the providers that are delivering those solutions. I won't name the provider, but you can do some homework there. So we're just curious. We see a lot of opportunity around cloud-based backup. It's a low-hanging fruit opportunity to leverage cloud, and we're curious to see what your perspective is on that. You can tweet that to Avnet Cloud Ready and hashtag Avnet Tech Talk. So with that, I think I want to dive in, and actually let's hit a question right off. The question came in from Andrew. This is a question actually directed at Avnet. How does Avnet help us resell the Savvis ecosystem and other cloud solutions?
Hey, Dan, I don't know if it's me, but you're breaking up.
Oh, is that right? Wow. It's funny because when I heard you talking, we were hearing a bit of that as well. So maybe, I don't know, it must be at I don't know if it's our end or yours. Scott, are you online? Can you hear?
Yeah, Dan, I can hear you okay. Jonathan, I actually heard your phone breaking up a little bit there too. So it might be on your line a little bit.
Okay. All right.
Well, we'll keep going. Jonathan, let me know if it gets too bad or if you can't hear a question or a comment, and I'll try and repeat as well.
Okay.
So the question from Andrew was, how does Avnet help us resell the Savvis ecosystem and other cloud solutions? Certainly, we get the question a lot. Where do we play into this? Well, first of all, we're leveraging a lot of the strengths from Savvis and some of our strategic cloud partnerships. I think the first thing we're bringing is really picking the right provider. So helping work with our partners to understand the options and capabilities that exist and the strengths that our cloud providers and our partnerships are providing to our partners for solving solutions for their customers. That's one key area. Vetting cloud providers. We've gone through a lot of analysis and a lot of work to get to what we feel is a small and very strong set of partnerships that we think represents the majority of the opportunity in the market, where we can help our partners deliver the best of breed to their customers. And certainly so as part of that, a focus on pre-integrated and packaged offerings, and you'll see that on Cloud Ready. These are pre-designed solutions that are built around our cloud providers and usually are bringing multiple elements together in a predefined and pre-architected solution. Focus on kind of solving low-hanging fruit cloud opportunities in a number of areas: test and dev, app hosting, productivity and collaboration, and backup and disaster recovery are some of the key areas that we see an opportunity to leverage the cloud. And then certainly helping our partners build their own solutions. So our solution architects that are working very closely with the technical architects within our cloud providers, designing blueprints around custom business and technical requirements, mapping solutions to costs and quotes. And through some of the solutions, we're providing enhancing capabilities of our providers, I think, is another area. The fourth kind of key area is the contract model. And the focus there, and this has been really one of the key things we focused on when we were building the Avnet Cloud Solutions team and how we were going to engage with our cloud provider relationships, is the contract model. And it's all about streamlining the model in a way that's going to provide the maximum benefit to our partners and Avnet and our cloud provider to make it easier for our partners to accelerate around bringing their solutions to market.
And Dan, this is Brian. Would you comment on, a lot of our partners want to understand how, if they enter into a 3-year contract on a particular service deal, what happens at the end of the contract? They're asking, am I protected? You know, and so from a contractual perspective, can you comment on that? Do they have full customer ownership?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I see. Yeah, absolutely. We do see a lot of questions out there around, you know, sort of referral scenarios, or it's about customer ownership, and I think that's part of both the spirit of how we're engaging. Certainly, with our relationship with Savvis, is a strong strategic relationship, and you know, we're collectively committed to helping our partners continue to service their customer and leverage the strength that we bring to help support them in solving those customer problems. So hopefully that gives you a good perspective, Andrew, in terms of where we are and how we fit into the whole ecosystem. The second question, and Johnathan, this is kind of getting into some of the topics we wanted to discuss, is what tools are available / recommended for accurate monthly reporting for cloud solutions, by Justin. And then the second question by Ronald was interest in hearing about how you handle monthly usage reporting. Is it manual or automatic? Before I kind of get into, you know, some things, Johnathan, maybe this tees up. There's certainly been a lot of, I think, recent work in your cloud platform, and where you're trying to get to with the Savvis cloud strategy. Maybe you could comment for everyone on some of the recent things that have been brought out to enhance your platform, and a bit on what the Savvis strategy is around cloud, where you're kind of heading with some of the things you're doing there.
Yeah, great. And I might after that, I might ask you just to restate the questions to make sure that I answer them completely. So just in terms of where we are headed is we're today offering a portfolio of cloud offerings, and we've been focused on simplifying those offerings into, as our CTO likes to say, you know, calling things what they are. So we have different families of offerings. So we have a cloud data center product, cloud server product, cloud apps, cloud developer, and cloud storage. So 5 families of cloud offerings that we're really focused on and bringing to market. And those offerings are extensions of, as I mentioned earlier, the portfolio of other offerings that we have, and you know, be they network or security or managed services or co-location. And you know, we view all of these things as complementary, and have a lot of customers and partners that are using multiple products to meet their needs. Either, you know, on one project they're using multiple products over time. One project is cloud-based, another project is more co-location-based or managed hosting-based, and you know, it's a big part of our value proposition. We refer to that as the stairway to cloud, so to speak, is that customers have their own data centers, and they are looking to meet the needs of what's next for them, whatever that is. A project that's infrastructure-based, perhaps a consolidation or a new office that's opening, a project that is developer-based, that is building a new app in the cloud for a mobile app. We really want to be a partner to our Fortune 5,000 customer base, and meeting the needs of them as a platform for co-location, hosting, managed services, and cloud. And inside a cloud, in those 5 families I mentioned, we do offer, they are, you know, on-demand, utility-based cloud offerings. Now, Cloud Data Center is really focused on offering a virtual private cloud capability. And we've been we've been providing cloud services and virtual private cloud services for a number of years now, and have provided an on-demand billing and metering capability for Cloud Data Center, and that is true for other cloud products as well. I think a lot of that is really table stakes. Now, there are instances where folks will sign up for term commits or a period of time for dedicated instances where usage and metering, and I'm keying to your second question, is more will be pre-established or will be set on a reserve amount or dedicated instance. But Cloud Data Center, cloud servers, cloud storage, all of those are based on really usage and metering bases. And can you restate the first question, just to make sure that I answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. And these are, I think there's some similarity across these, but the first question was what tools are available / recommended for accurate monthly reporting for cloud solution providers. And I think this is an interesting one because I think one of the strengths that Savvis has is in sort of visibility to some of this information in the platform. That doesn't exist in all cloud providers, and I think we see in some of our other cloud providers a little ecosystem of partners that are evolving to solve those gaps, and we could certainly talk about our experiences there. But maybe, Johnathan, from a Savvis perspective, maybe you can comment on some of the tools that are inherent in the platform that help a partner and their customer effectively track their cloud usage.
So the way we've designed our cloud offerings, and if you look at where we're going with chargeback and reporting, is every customer is different and has, many of them have their own capabilities. And from our standpoint, we want to be enabling our customers' internal systems. And I think where we're focused right now is increasingly enabling chargeback capabilities so that customers can know a given project or a given batch of compute is related to certain cost center inside their business. Now, anyone that has touched billing of really any magnitude knows that that's a very heavy lift, and this question is actually a very complex question we could take this whole call on. Where we are, again, is focused on enabling the outputs, and we have those capabilities today. I think what we're focused on in Cloud Data Center and also from a cloud developer standpoint is looking at how our infrastructure as a service offering and how the private PaaS capabilities we're bringing to market can be charged back internally in a more efficient way. And I don't think we're there all the way yet, but it's something that we're definitely focused on and have a lot of client engagement and input on and know where we're headed as the next couple months unfold.
Awesome. In terms of the platform itself and how it's evolving, certainly, and you're kind of, I think, hinting to some of this, in terms of focus on API integration, for example, how does that sort of fit into the strategy in terms of where the platform's evolving? How important is that, to where you're heading? And inside of, and I think some of the recent changes that have happened, or I'll call it enhancements, what were some of the things that were important? I think you've talked a little bit about the importance of how you integrate the private data center with the cloud. I think that's a huge Savvis strength. But maybe make a couple comments on even specifically API integration and where that fits into the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we a year ago announced an ecosystem program that was based on the VCD, vCloud Director API, And more recently, we announced the availability of a cloud storage-based ecosystem around the Atmos API. And we are watching with interest the debates around the OpenStack API, for example, and where that's headed. And we believe that, and have seen in the market with folks like Amazon and others, and really an entire industry of SaaS providers in many instances, that API endpoints matter, and they're going to just increasingly matter. And it's not just true for service providers, it's true for product development, it's true for whole industries of data processing, and how as the Internet of Things arises and as software as a service continues to gain prominence, that API endpoints really matter. And from our standpoint, we have a VMware-based cloud. We, a year ago, had really our own homegrown API, Savvis Station API. And looking at where we saw VMware and the vCloud API going, we saw more leverage there, and that's where we launched that ecosystem, and also true for the Atmos API. And now true for future products and the evaluation of those products. Part of it is thinking about the API and how an ecosystem around that API can help extend offerings out to partners such as Avnet. And example there is what we're doing with Riverbed and their whitewater appliance, which can go out and replicate data back to our cloud storage product, which is leveraging the Atmos API. And so we're looking at how can we extend and interoperate from an API set, and that's as true for channels and offerings like what we're doing with Avnet and Whitewater. But it's also true for integrating with orchestration tools and managing the application lifecycle, and looking at how we're migrating workloads, how we're orchestrating workloads, how we're backing up workloads. All of those things are, the API is relevant. And then I think beyond the API, is starting to think ahead to, we're thinking about it, PaaS, platform as a service add-ons, and capabilities that also expand and extend and enhance what companies are doing and building. So a developer coming into our cloud is not really looking at an IaaS experience. They can if they want to, but where we're seeing is that a developer can come in and access the language and frameworks that they want, but also access complementary add-ons, be it a particular software appliance or database, virtual database or load balancer, that helps accelerate what they're trying to build at the PaaS layer. And that they know, and that at the same time, that developer can know that the IT administrator underneath is happy because they have interoperability with that underlying IaaS instance and can orchestrate and migrate and move around if they need to. And I'm sort of going a further afield than just the API discussion, but really the API is this meta desire for interoperability and extensibility. So I can know whether I'm IT, business, developer, I can interoperate with what I'm putting out there in the cloud. That's important, it matters. And interoperate can mean a lot of different things depending upon who you are and what you're trying to do. The way I think about it, it's really a 360-degree interaction around that item of compute. Am I backing it up? Am I putting it there in the first place? Am I managing it? Am I migrating it? But it's also an element of extensibility too. And extensibility is a term that is about taking into account the future, and that I'm going to continue to have what I need from a platform standpoint, and that what an API allows is a flexibility at the perimeter, so that as new tools and new practices emerge, that you really can anticipate now that there's a space for innovation and co-creation around that. And that's really how we're thinking about ecosystem, is that We have clients that come to us with a tool that they're using for an insurance company that was using a certain tool for their software development lifecycle, and it interacted with the VCD API. We had not had history with it before, but it was important to this client and actually one or two other clients. So we went through the process of onboarding them and engaging them, and then what happened is a win-win where test dev could happen in client data center on servers that it needed to happen on, and production could happen in our cloud. And interestingly, sometimes that's vice versa. But it's those types of tools and being interoperable. That was an existing tool that they were using. So by using our APIs and becoming interoperable with it, we were able to extend their existing practices and make it easier for them to adopt and use our cloud. And it's a win-win for really all involved.
Yeah, you know, for us in our vantage point, we get a lot of questions from our partners who are coming to us with, you know, business requirements and technical requirements around cloud. You know, I think the question we get quite a bit is, how do you guys decide who the right provider is to solve this particular requirement? And kind of just building on what you've been talking about, just brings me back to the maturity model that we had created, I think, a year and a half ago, and certainly there's a lot of those flavors in the market around the evolution of the data center, you know, moving from virtualization into standardized infrastructure, into automation and orchestration, into IT as a service, and into the public cloud. And that's not really an either-or decision. The answer is, you know, where do I put this? And it depends. And I think that's one of the strengths that in your strategy, it's why I wanted to kind of call that out in our conversation, is that there's definitely a strength in what you have and where you're heading, with the focus on helping to facilitate that, which is, you know, the recognition of the role that a VMware plays, for example, inside the private data center, and how it can be, you know, more seamlessly tapped into as this thing progresses. And, you know, we've certainly seen customers who have, and this is, I would say, few and far between, but there are scenarios where customers have certainly moved to the cloud and you know, in a very, I'll say, abrupt and a direct way, and have scaled rapidly into the cloud, and have gotten to a point where they've realized that it makes more sense in their business case to move some of that back out. And so I think that is, you know, definitely something we'll continue to see. It's not going to be as much about an either-or scenario in certain cases as it is what's the right decision for the customer. And I think from a Savvis point of view, certainly, you know, integrated and focused on enterprise, we'll call it enterprise class clouds, and being able to help facilitate that is important. And certainly, I think, feeds into your strategy too.
Absolutely.
Just around, kind of, I guess, building on that a little bit, from a hybrid cloud point of view, maybe touch a little bit on, you mentioned in the introduction some of the strategic partnerships, called out Cisco and a few others. How is that kind of fitting in to where you're heading with your strategy? Why is that relevant? You know, when in some scenarios, cloud providers are going totally white label in terms of their infrastructure, and why is that strategic? Those kinds of partnerships on the infrastructure side important to Savvis?
So I think part of it is understanding the portfolio that we have and that we operate. So we have, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of servers from a co-location standpoint, right? And even how you define a server now, but just you look at storage, you look at co-location, and you just look at the footprint we have. We have a very large scale environment, but it is not a homogeneous environment. It is a heterogeneous environment, to say the least. It's a co-location environment at that part of the business where people come in and they are choosing co-location because maybe there's some legacy pieces and they've just grown up that way, or even today we have new workloads that come in that for regulatory reasons or for the attributes of that workload need to be on a very specific hardware appliance, and clients want to get the benefit of OpExing it, but still keeping control over that environment. And that is a growing business for us, and it's a growing business in the industry. Co-location is a growing business. And then you take a step up from there and look at managed hosting, which is also still a growing business. Now that is subject to change, of course, because increasingly you can get on demand in cloud. You can rent what you used to sort of provision or lease. But that is also a big business for us, and we have a lot of grid computing work that's going on still, and a lot of other workloads and projects that happen there. And then you look at cloud, and you look at where we are, and right now the cloud data center offerings that we have, we are a Cisco-powered cloud, and we made those decisions because VMware and Cisco is designed, and its converged structure and networking made sense both economically, operationally, and from a security and reliability standpoint. And we have the performance studies to back this up, that our clients looking for enterprise, put enterprise workloads in the cloud, want to know that they're paying for a certain kind of performance and a known state of that. And we designed that in mind. And then additionally, that's sort of building up from co-location to managed hosting to cloud, is that our cloud sits in a different, Savvis is building cloud for Savvis and to serve the needs of our customers. We are not trying to out Amazon. Before coming to Savvis, spent a couple years at Joyent, and then before that at Verizon, and I've had a chance to see the nature of these companies are different. Verizon's a very different company than Joyent was, than a different company than Savvis CenturyLink is. And while there's overlap and there's certain competitive commonalities that we need to think about, there's also differentiation and taking into account if you are a company that has a global MPLS network and a global suite of network assets and has a global co-location capability and a global customer base with managed hosting and a cloud, that cloud is going to look different than, and can look different than a company that is building, if you look at Microsoft, you look at Google, they started out and originated from a very different place, and they're building a very just an admirer of the computer science of it all, but it is a very purpose-built, designed thing. And I think we're looking at we look at alliances and partnerships as a supply chain, and that a lot of our value in the marketplace is having relations. We have clients that do a lot of work with VMware. They have an existing client, they have existing base on VMware, and now VMware is moving to the push around the software-defined data center. Well, we're one of the world's biggest data center companies, so it's logical for us to think about, well, how does that work, and how does that happen, and how do we make it easy for clients who have an existing VMware-based cloud, or even just VMware-based virtualization workloads that's not a cloud? How do we make that easy to come to us? And that's why it's important for us to have a close strategic relationship with VMware, and that's why we do have a close strategic relationship with VMware, so that clients and partners like Avnet can know that if I come to Savvis, I'm going to have best access to VMware roadmap technology, and that we think is important. Now that said, we also think it's important that we look at other supply chain and alternatives, and that we're watching what's happening with OpenStack, we're watching what's happening with open source, and we are participating in those and view those items also as elements and things that we need to be thinking about. And that if you look at the clouds that are out there, there's been billions of dollars spent to build those infrastructures, both at Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Savvis for that matter, in terms of the investments that are taking. And I think we're making those investments in our data centers and in our cloud, but we're also looking at how the ecosystems around us and the investments that those partners have made, like VMware and Cisco and others, how we can help partner and interoperate with those investments and those supply chains and those core competencies to make it a win-win for our clients, so that if a client has an investment in a VMware infrastructure, we make it easy for them to OpEx enable or extend it here. Same at the hardware level with Cisco. And over time, expanding that, we've got a great relationship with NetApp, and we do a lot with NetApp, and we do in terms of backup. And our cloud storage offering is built with EMC and the Atmos API, and we have a great relationship with EMC. And we look at how we can extend and build the go-to-market motion in these enterprise accounts with those partners. And it's an important part of how we think about the business and how we differentiate maybe from some other players who are taking sort of that pure play white box approach to things. And not to say that we also don't look at that approach. Have a lot of background and experience with that, and there's times where that is the right approach. If you're looking to do certain things and offer a commodity-based cloud server, that can make a lot of sense, and we've looked at that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you'd have asked me 3 years ago if it mattered what technology was sitting behind the walls of the cloud provider, I probably would have said, that's not relevant, that's not the point. At least that would have been a high-level kind of answer. I think a lot of people have sort of looked at it that way. And to your point, there's a lot of different answers there. I think when we're looking at cloud providers from an Avnet point of view, certainly the technology stack is important. So obviously the innovation, the ability to deliver the service effectively and everything that surrounds that. But some of the other areas is the ecosystem. We've touched on that a little bit. I'll say the maturity of that ecosystem, because it really represents the ability for customers and partners to design and integrate around the infrastructure and provides more robustness and options. I think channel model maturity is another thing that we recognize that's a key to how we would assess or measure up cloud providers. And I think along with that, alignment with technology manufacturers we're seeing is more relevant, because certainly a lot of our partners, from an Avnet point of view, there's certainly a large partner network out there that's interacting with their customers, and they're delivering solutions inside that data center, and they're built on some of these technology platforms. So I think it's definitely relevant how the cloud providers are connecting to that, not only for I think helping to facilitate the end customer in terms of the evolution of how they're managing their workloads and integrating them, but also from how the partner base can contribute and extend that and add on to that as they're working with their customers. So I guess just a couple extra thoughts on that front.
Yeah, no, a great example of that is just an anecdote I share is, we know as part of our Cisco relationship, we've been working with Intel, and Intel has and this under the example of why infrastructure can matters. It can matter, and I think there are times where commodity compute is commodity compute, but there are times where the underlying infrastructure and who you're working with and how they're thinking about things definitely matters. And we're doing work right now with Intel and their trusted execution platform, which we've included in our Cisco-based cloud data center offering. And what Intel and TXT, and it's been around for a while, and it's sort of been in the coming, and it's taken some time, and I think it's still building momentum to catch on, but conceptually it's a very important piece of the equation, because what it enables is things like workload geofencing and an out-of-band execution loop at the chip level on what's happening in the VM. And it's a kind of security control and compliance control and situation awareness element that if you're just in any old cloud, how do you really know where you are? How do you know the BIOS isn't corrupted? That there's, and that's just an example of why the underlying infrastructure matters. And there's other reasons, but I always share that one as just an example of a tangible example.
Yeah, awesome, absolutely. It's funny, as I was listening to you talk, that's becoming more and more. There's more and more happening on that front, and more even application manufacturers, some of which we're working with in our strategic partner list, who are focused on obviously integrating in and around some of the functionality that Intel's trying to bring forward to solve some of the areas that you were just discussing. Just maybe stepping back for a second, Brian, let's tee up. I know, Johnathan, you had talked earlier around some of the different services, and I thought it'd be a good time to just give an example of one of the integrated package offerings that we've kind of tied into Savvis, and you had actually chatted about it earlier around Riverbed. So I wanted to just get Brian to spend a second and just highlight the specific packages that we've got. And we certainly can work with custom requirements in and around this area, but wanted to highlight this real quickly. Maybe, Brian, you could tee up the slide, or sorry, I should say, Scott, tee up that slide on the cloud backup powered by Savvis, and just give us a quick snapshot.
Yeah, definitely can give a quick overview. The cloud backup for enterprise powered by Sabbath, again, as Johnathan was talking about, the EMC Atmos API-based object storage, we point to that using a virtual appliance by Riverbed. It's their whitewater appliance, and this environment is meant to be an easy way to integrate to an existing environment where a client might be using a Commvault backup software, Veeam, Tivoli Storage Manager, certainly a backup exec or net backup. These types of software packages can point to NFS or CIFS type devices, and the Riverbed device simulates that. So this is where a client might be doing tape today, but wants to consider cloud potentially in this case, or even not even worried about tape, but just wanting to get their data into the cloud, which opens up some disaster recovery type elements. But for the most part, this package has great integration points, very easy to set up. And to Johnathan's point about manufacturers do matter, this sits on top of a VMware stack that would exist on-prem of a client. So I think that I might be a little dated, but 60% of folks are running virtualized machines, and 80% of those virtualized machines are VMware. So this is why we chose the Riverbed virtual appliance, that it runs on VMware, as well as placing the data in the Savvis environment. once the data is seated and up in the cloud, the service can very quickly protect you from a disaster. If you have an outage or declare an emergency or an outage on-prem, you can bring up another virtual appliance, bring up another Riverbed device in another data center, if you will, and point to that bucket, if you will, that's in the cloud and begin to restore data as quick as you can set that up. So it's a very, very nice, easy way to get your data if you have to declare an outage. We've developed packages, and what we've done, Dan mentioned the word custom. We've developed packages because we find that our partners, when they go in front of end clients and prospects, that a way to quickly get to a price point, a way to quickly identify capabilities is in a package. A package has a list of features and functions, and it very quickly shows the partner and the end client that we have something to offer at a certain price point. In our packages, we go from 1 terabyte up to 32 terabytes of cloud at-rest storage. So because these devices dedupe and compress, these local data sets can be in the hundreds of terabytes. That's really just a quick overview of the offering.
Super, thanks. And you know, one thing to kind of highlight, and this is an example of, back to the very, I think it was the first question about what we bring to this. We're certainly leveraging Savvis's focus on integration and the ability to bring that technology together to solve a use case scenario. What we've brought with the packages is more around, first of all, that's delivered as a virtual appliance totally in a subscription service. So we've really knocked down all the barriers from a CapEx point of view, and it's totally monthly with no setup fee or term commitment. So that's one element we're bringing uniquely, and we're leveraging our strong relationship with Riverbed to be able to do that. And I think the other thing is, with a lot of customers, certainly understanding how cloud costs translate to the bill at the end of the month once the solution is in place. And we've removed a lot of that complexity and really short-circuited it down to a very discrete set of variables and cost elements that are part of the packages. So makes it easier for people to understand how to leverage the solution and what it's going to cost them. And we've packaged that up in a really tight and easy to consume model, all kind of available via Avnet. So thanks, Brian. One of the questions, just going back to the questions that came in, the question here from Dwight was, how do you minimize network latency? And it says, with this architecture, to make it feasible for mission-critical applications, and how do you maximize security of data at rest, as well as data in transit? So I'm not 100% sure what this architecture is.
Could be cloud.
Could be cloud in general. Certainly, a couple comments and kick it over to you, Johnathan. I mean, obviously, very application-centric in terms of how network latency is addressed and impacted and designed around. In a lot of cases, when we're into those scenarios, we're looking at proximity between resources and the cloud. So in some cases, you've got to have cloud providers with multiple sites with the ability to bring the technology elements together. I'll use an example of that. Our cloud attach packages under the private cloud storage for NetApp is one of the solutions that is pre-designed and built around very specific specifications with network latency. We want it to be workload independent between cloud compute and customer-owned storage, so we had to design it around specific locations that were in proximity to the cloud provider data centers. So, Jonathan, from your perspective, when a question like that comes up, what's your thoughts on network latency as it relates to connecting to your cloud services?
So I think a lot of the cloud to date is an internet path cloud, and increasingly, and that will obviously continue. And there's a whole facet of things to take into account on that in terms of how end user customers are connecting and what your strategies are to have performance come to what you're hosting in the cloud, but then also how you are connecting and VPNing and interacting with what you're putting in the cloud. And I think all of that to date has been really strongly done through mostly internet path. And what we see very strongly increasingly, and even what we've announced with VMware and its VCHS offering, is increasing options of direct connectivity, increasing options of MPLS integration and connectivity, of private line Ethernet, which Amazon has been doing for a number of years now, but really just focused on Ethernet and a fairly manual process and not really all that sophisticated, because neither Amazon or Equinix are network providers. So I think being a network provider, we're able to look at latency and look at how we can support and interoperate with use cases where the whole cloud is behind the firewall, but hosted in our cloud, or parts of it are behind the firewall and other parts aren't. And parts of it are have certain point-to-point circuits, or a whole manner of different things to enable and address latency, but then also throughput requirements and burst requirements and regulatory requirements. There's really a lot. We see connectivity increasingly playing an enormous role in cloud. And if you look at any computer, it's network, storage, and compute, and and network is a big part of the equation. So that's maybe too high level of an answer, but that's really, I take it up there just because that's such an area that we're focused on. And even recently it announced some CenturyLink connected cloud bundles where we're bundling cloud network offerings with, if you buy a certain amount of cloud, you get the network for free. And we're starting to experiment with those types of bundles so that for different workloads like DR and other kinds of workloads, you could think of video encoding and other things, that we start to look at that as one whole system. And you start to look at how you can, through network, make the network an extension of the cloud and make the cloud the network. And I think that's a frontier that increasingly as software-defined networking protocols and other capabilities become more widely adopted, that will only make these types of things easier to do and easier to address.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You bring up a great point around the dynamic of internet access based and direct connector dedicated circuit based or private network, or however you want to kind of position it. But we certainly are seeing way more of that as well in terms of opportunities with customers and our partners, where that question's coming up more and more. Not just network latency driven, number of reasons I think that drive it, but we're definitely seeing that. I'm just looking at the time. I don't think we have enough time to go into another question. I think we've gotten through a good chunk of them. There's definitely some other questions here that we'll make sure that if we didn't answer your question, we will circle around with answers. And again, feel free to reach out to us at any point through the Cloud Solutions team if you have other questions. So I think we'll kind of wrap things up. Johnathan, thanks very much for joining. Really appreciate you taking the time and appreciate your insights and comments and information around Savvis.
Absolutely, my pleasure. This is a great session, and thank you all for the time. And have a great weekend, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Enjoy your weekend. And again, this session will be posted on Avnet Cloud Ready under the blog session if you want to refer back to it or play back. So thanks very much.
Take care.